Hey guys, it's the 20th of July and we know what that means. That's today's deals on the Steam Summer Sale, which of course ends the 22nd, so just a few days left now. We're going to be starting off with a pretty damn good game actually, and that's Fear 3. I actually really like the Fear series. It does have some critics, but that's just natural of course. You can pick, however, Fear 3 up for 75% off. That brings it to £3.24. Just quickly to mention, I do have a first impressions video of this, so you might want to check it out on the channel if you are interested. You can also buy the Fear Collection for 62% off. That's a fairly odd number actually for Steam sales, which brings it to about £13.79 once again if you're within the United Kingdom. Fear 1 is also available individually for £1.74 and so on. You can see the prices there. I will say Fear 1 is, in my opinion, probably the best out of the set, though it's a bit old now, and then I'd say it's Fear 3. Fear 2, however, is very good. I know some people dislike it, however, hear me out. I think Fear, it's not just the horror aspect, although it can be a bit, unnerving in certain areas. Some people maybe disagree, but I think one of the things I really like about Fear is that it's very interesting in terms of the way the story is narrated. I really like the characters in it, and also quite like the setting, the futuristic world, and just how you're kind of made into the character. I think it's very well told, and I like the slow-mo abilities and so on. I think it's a very atmospheric first-person shooter, and I think it's a bit of a twist as well. I very much like the paranormal aspect of the game. I think it's a bit different from regular games, and I do quite like the fact that sometimes you're not sure what's actually real or not. Now, once again, I do understand that some people don't find Fear terrifying, and because of that, they're put off by it. But I would actually say it's one of my favourite FPS actually, particularly the first one. Really like it, would recommend it. At the very least, you might want to pick up Fear 1 because it's so damn cheap. Bear in mind, of course, the graphics will suffer a little bit now simply because of the age. Fear 3, however, for those of you who just want the latest and greatest looking visually, of course, you might want to pick this one up. Pretty damn cheap, so great if you're just kind of getting into the series. Obviously, you will miss some of the storyline from the previous ones. It does have a contiguous and ongoing storyline, so up to you on that one. So not a bad pack deal as well. There was quite a lot of games in that one. Next up is one of the most famous names in gaming, Civilization. You could pick the Civilization 5 up, that's just the standalone for 75% off, which brings it to £4.99. Or you could buy the Civilization Collection, 76% off, which pretty sure they chose that just to get under the magical £20, which brings it to £19.99. Bear in mind, this does come with some of the old ones, such as Civilization 4's DLCs, as well as Civilization 3 Complete. You might not want this one if I'm talking about the entire pack. If you're just dipping your toes and you just want the latest and greatest. This is, of course, one of the most respected strategy games out there. So I'm pretty sure most of you have heard of it, or at the very least have been curious by it in the past. Whether you want this one or not is going to really depend on if it's your type of cup of tea. It is a couple of years old now, bear in mind. It was released on September, I believe, and so it's not the latest game, but obviously if you include the DLCs and all that, then that kind of makes it a bit later. Once again, not gonna amaze you or anything graphically, but it does the job. That's the most important thing. The graphics are functional and relatively detailed considering the size of the terrain you are looking at, and of course it is highly critically acclaimed. Whether you're going to want to buy this one depends whether it's your cup of Java, so to speak. But I think for those of you who have been interested in the Civilization or general God game or management games, it's a pretty good opportunity to dip your toes into the water without spending a lot of money and then realising you dislike it. If, however, you do like it and you've only paid this, then you've got to figure out whether you want to buy the rest of the packs or maybe try a different game. Anyway, it's a pretty good opportunity, so I'd recommend checking it out if you are interested in this type of genre. If there was one name that was synonymous with PC gaming, it was Deus Ex. Well, that and a few others, of course, but Deus Ex was certainly the love child of PC gaming for quite a while. And Deus Ex Human Revolution is just, well, awesome. I can't really put it any other way. It does have a few flaws, which I'm not really going to go into in depth in this because I did cover this one. But to say that it's a very good game is not giving it justice. You can play pretty much however you'd like. One of the slight issues, however, is there are ways through the game which, to put it mildly, are better than others. So while you can play the game X, Y, and Z, you're probably best to play it as X, because certain things, being non-lethal, for example, generally gives you slightly more experience. So if you want all the upgrades, particularly if you want them really quickly, you're best to basically maximise the points. I personally call it experience whoring. To be honest with you, I can't blame people who do it, and I completely understand, because some of the augmentations are very good, particularly the ones, for example, to reduce the damage when you're falling, that kind of thing. But of course I am getting slightly off the beaten path. More to the point, the graphics are lovely, and the storyline is pretty good. The voice acting and everything else you'd expect is top notch. I will say that this is probably one of my favourite games of its time, which is late last year. Definitely worth checking out. You can pick up, of course, Human Revolution for 75% off. That's, well, £5, or you can buy the Augmented Edition, which is a few quid more. Basically, you're looking at £7.49, once again 75% off. The Augmented Edition comes with a usual amount extra, and if you do choose to buy the DLCs individually, you can pick them up. The Missing Link in particular is pretty damn good, and I actually picked this up myself recently in the previous Steam sale, which I believe was, when was that? Christmas, I believe, was the previous one. Anyway, definitely a very good game. Heartily recommend you have checked it out if you have not already. Or, for example, if you own the PC, console version, you just want to, make the upgrade to high definition, so to speak. So, great opportunity to pick this one up. Next up is Crysis 2, and the rest of the Crysis games, of course. I very much like Crysis. I know some people will put it off as a first-person shooter with just pretty graphics and not much else. I'm here to tell you that I would actually slightly disagree. However, to get on with the pricing real quick, it's 75% off for the entire collection. That makes it £9.99, or you can pick up Crysis 1 for £2.99. Maximum edition of Crysis 2 is £7.49, and finally Warhead is £2.39. Now I'm going to go into each of the games really quickly. I very, very much like Crysis 1 and Warhead for very different reasons. I actually was very torn between the two. I actually picked these up just before Christmas, I think, or around Christmas. I believe it was then, anyway, at the summer sale. It doesn't really matter. But I will say that Crysis and Crysis Warhead are quite different games. I actually slightly prefer the single player of Crysis Warhead, if I'm honest. Now, I would hardly recommend checking both games out, but if we're going to be talking about Crysis 2, well, it's changed a bit. First of all, your ability to switch between powers, if you will, of the suit has been greatly enhanced, which is quite nice because there was a lot of cool stuff that frankly I wanted to really do in Crysis 1 and Warhead, but it was a bit fiddly to switch between abilities really fast. Crysis 2 it's not so difficult. Also, they've improved the graphics, added extra rendering modes, so on. So Crysis 2 does look better. Also, I believe the performance on lower spec machines, or comparatively lower spec machines, has improved, which is fairly impressive. Whether you want to buy Crysis 2 if you do not own Crysis 1, or indeed Warhead, is up to you. Personally, I would say the difference between owning the Crysis 2 only and the entire set is very little, so I'd probably recommend checking all of them out if you can stretch. I would, however, recommend Crysis any day of the week. I think it's very pretty, and there is something very satisfying about the powers that you've got. I would say the storyline is not exactly top notch, but it is well written. It's certainly better than some of the Hollywood movies that have been putting out recently. I won't mention any particular names, but I quite like it. I think the voice acting and everything else is reasonable. The storytelling is done at a relatively good pace, and more to the point as well, there is nothing quite as satisfying as, oh, I don't know, for example, going invisible, creeping behind an enemy soldier, grabbing him by the throat, increasing your actual strength to maximum, grabbing said enemy, hurtling him across the screen, sniper rifling him in the face, and then activating full speed mode, running away, activating your armor, going behind, and then jumping up really high, and then going back to camouflage mode, and then laughing as his friends in vain try to look for you. There's something very satisfying about that. And it's also incredibly difficult to say that without, you know, stumbling over the words over such speed. So I definitely think you should give me points for that one. Anyway, moving on. Next up, we have Driver. Once again, 75% off. It seems to be the magical number on this particular sale. It brings it to £4.99. This is actually one of those games that I did not cover personally, and I have not played. However, I do know that anyone who has touched the game really likes it. I would recommend, of course, that you do check it out, or at least a review or some gameplay. I do know, however, it's very critically acclaimed, and at this price it is not bad at all. Graphics are very impressive, and so on. So while I can't give you much personal opinion on it, I will let you know that pretty much anyone I know who either owns it or has played it very much values it, and no one I know that has actually bought it regrets it. As for normal reviews, such as your regular, you know, big gaming sites, all of them are quite happy, and Metacritic also rate it pretty highly. So you might want to check this one out yourself and let me know. You can also buy the Driver San Francisco Digital Deluxe Edition, should I say, for 75% off. Once again, that brings it to £6.24, which gives you a few extra challenges and a few extra cars for multiplayer. Whether that's worth it to you is up to you entirely. Dungeon Defenders is also available on the Steam sale. It looks fairly cutesy, to say the least, and it is 75% off, £2.49. Once again, pretty highly critically acclaimed. You can also pick up a 4-pack of this one if you happen to have a lot of friends that wants to play with you, and that's 75% off, once again £7.49. So in other words, you get one copy for Bupkus, as they would say, and you can also pick up some DLCs for the game as well. They vary in price quite a lot, and there is apparently, how many were there? I believe there was like 20 odd. So there's quite a few bits of DLC. So you might, I believe there's 20 odd. So yeah, you might want to check that one out. Very critically acclaimed, as I've said. Most people I know have played it and liked it. I personally have not tried it myself, but it is a tower defense action RPG, which is an interesting mix, to say the least. So if that's kind of your bag, or at least piquing your curiosity, you might want to check it out. Next up is probably one of the most famous of the indie titles, and that is Magica. I'm pretty sure a lot of you already own this one by now. It was released about a year and a half ago, but nevertheless it's available on the sale, 75% off for $1.99 for the base game, or you can buy the 4-pack for basically $6.99, 75% off once again. So for those of you who are bad at maths, that's once again roughly one free copy. You can also pick up all of the collection, which is quite a lot of stuffs, and that is £5.99, once again 75% off. Or you could buy various pieces of DLC. I'm pretty sure most of you are going to probably want to get the Stars That Are Left, which is one of the true pieces of DLC, and it's also one of the most critically enjoyed pieces of DLC. Now this, in case you're not completely aware, is basically you play the role of a wizard, and the idea is that you go along your quest and storyline, and bear in mind some of them are arena type of things, and you go ahead and you try to progress through the story. The really interesting thing about this, however, is the fact that you can actually combine powers and do very interesting things with it. So for example, you get water, lightning, so on, and various combinations don't go so well. For example, if you combine water and electricity together, doesn't go so well for you. On the other hand, if you were to combine, say, earth and, let's say, fire, interesting things happen. And you can also cast spells on yourself to heal. You can go co-op and heal other people, or you can do AoE damage. You can create shields. It's very interesting stuff, particularly if you happen to be having a multiplayer co-op. You can do some very interesting things, and it makes it a lot more interesting. The game's not 100% balanced, however, if you are playing multiplayer, but that's just the nature of it. It's meant to be really fun. You can actually play co-op on this one, on the same system. I will, however, warn you that that means that one of you is going to most likely be left holding the pad, so to speak. This is not awful, necessarily, but it does require some finesse and practice if that's your bag to go local co-op. So it might be better for you to instead try to insist one of your friends picks it up on their PC or laptop, since the game is not particularly demanding on specification wise. Anyway, moving on. Next up is Red Orchestra 2, Heroes of Stalingrad. You can pick up the regular edition, 75% off, that's £3.74, or the deluxe edition for £4.99. It has a few extra things to own the deluxe edition, including a few extra weapons and a few other bits and pieces. Up to you if you want that. Some people might want to cough up the extra, pound or so. I suppose it is only £1, roughly anyway. This is once again pretty critically acclaimed, and also Metacritic quite like it. Once again, quite a lot few people like this one. I can't personally offer that much experience with it. I do know a lot of people who have played it, and I do know a lot of people who like it. I know one or two who aren't quite so keen, but they're not particularly massive first-person shooter or shooting fans. So up to you on this one. I would probably recommend you do a bit of checking on this one before you buy it. Once again, I cannot play every single game as much as I would like to. I really would like to give you my personal opinions on every single game. It's not really viable for me to do so, and I'm not going to lie to you guys because that's completely and utterly unfair. So of course, once again, I do some checking for you. I do check out a few reviews, have a quick look, and then I give you my opinions based upon that, or shall I say, my research based upon that. But I'm not going to lie and pretend that I have a personal opinion on something when I have not, because that is totally unfair, and I'm not going to lie to you guys. So moving on. You guessed it, folks, Indie Bundle 9, if you can believe it, 75% off, £6.99. Big surprise there. Pretty good selection of games actually in this one. Probably the best ones would be VVV and Jamestown for most people. Armata has pretty much played all of them, and she reliably tells me that all of them are really good. The only one she has not played actually is Revenge of the Titans, but she says VVV and Jamestown are very fun. Once again, this is a case where you do not particularly want to just buy one game, unless, for example, it's just Jamestown by itself. Once again, or possibly VVV, but even so, even if you was to say VVV by itself, let's say £2 and £3, that's £5, so you might as well pick the rest of them up, to be honest with you, unless you really don't like them, or you already own them. Once again, not a bad collection at all, a lot better than yesterday's fairly weak showing actually of the indie bundles, so not a bad selection at all. I quite like the rather interesting selection in terms of there's quite a lot of genres of games, so at the very least you're not going to be buying the same thing over and over and over again. And by the same thing, I obviously mean the same genre of games. There's nothing quite like owning like 6 action games or something in a pack, and of course invariably you're going to end up liking one more than the other anyway. So with that said, we're going to now be closing up with the final bits and pieces. Just to remind you guys, tomorrow I am going to most likely be putting together my information on all the really good packs that are available. There are some pretty good ones actually, that are kind of flying under the radar actually, including Penumbra. I'm surprised with the amount of people who are not buying Penumbra Collection. There's actually 2 of them in there, despite the fact it's very similar to Amnesia. One of them, however, you get a weapon in them. I can never remember which one that is. And one of them you do not get a weapon in, so it's a bit more horrifying. Anyway, moving on. On the community's choice, we have Splinter Cell, Conviction, for example. That's £3.24, that's 75% off. A very good game, really like it, by the way. Crusader Kings 2, not so great. I haven't personally tried it, but the reviews on this one are somewhat mixed. Far Cry 2, this is one of those games where opinions are, to say they're divided is an understatement. I quite liked it, but I don't think it was a patch on the original Far Cry. Other people absolutely bloody hate it because of the amount of trekking involved. Other people said it adds to the atmosphere. Leave this one to you. I've mentioned Limbo in previous videos to say that it's fun and somewhat lonely, actually. It's one of the more atmospheric games, which you wouldn't expect given the graphics. It's only got a few hours left, however, about 3 I believe, once this, well, even now from recording, so it's probably going to be about 2 to 2.5 when the video is edited and uploaded. You might want to pick this one up, however, if you do manage to get the deal. Once again, you can actually play this one fine, by the way, in case you're wondering, on keyboard. You're not going to be penalised too much without a 360 pad, but you should pick one up anyway, just for a matter of course. You can pick the wired one up now for about £20 or so. Not quite sure what that would be in dollars, but I imagine it would be, you know, fairly cheap. Finally, there is, for about 7 hours remaining on it, is Insanely Twisted Shadow Planet. I have done a long ass video on this one. You might want to check it out. It's very, very good. The animation is extremely nice. 75% off, that's $2.99. A very good bargain. It's not that old either. A couple of months, maybe a month old. April actually, so it's a little bit older than I thought. So definitely worth checking this one out if it's still available on the sale. So anyway, guys, hopefully this would have pretty much run through everything that's available. Once again, yesterday's deals are of course still up, at least for me now, 11.5 hours. I did do yesterday's video, which goes through pretty much all of them, including Fallout, The Witcher, Alan Wake, blah blah blah. So go ahead and check that if you are interested in still looking at yesterday's deals. There are obviously a few hours left. So anyway, hopefully this video has been really helpful to you guys. And I will see you tomorrow, of course, roughly the same time, and of course, same place, RedGamingTech. Also, remember to check out our RedGamingTech.com website, which is almost completely finished now. There's a few little bugs here and there that I am fixing, but with everything that's going on, it's not surprising that I've slowed down a little bit with creation. However, it will be finished hopefully within the next week or two, and either way, we are still, of course, furiously posting articles and stuff, and you can also check out my history of fighting games, my own personal take on them. I have an article on there. It's quite interesting, actually. It goes from the really old stuff like the Amstrad and Spectrum kind of days and Commodore days, all the way up to the later Genesis area. So anyway, hopefully you guys have found this video useful. So take care of yourselves and bye for now.